Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I noticed on the channel we did not have a guide on how to strafe like a pro on Apex Legends. This was a highly requested video, and I've talked about it several times in other videos, but it's time to do a dedicated video. Now let's get straight to the point. What is a basic strafe? That's what we're going to cover. The impact of weapons on a strafe. How to do a pro strafe. Then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of doing that, like the weapon impact and the difference in your aim. And then we're going to talk about strafing to counter recoil. So let's break all of these down. I have Sarah who's going to help me today, but we're going to start with what is a basic strafe. So let's start with the fundamentals of what is a strafe. In FPS games, it's very important to actually strafe so you're not a target that is standing still. Because if you're standing still, then you're pretty much a sitting duck and everyone doesn't have to really aim to really hit you. But if you're strafing left and right, like you see on screen, this is going to be a much more difficult target to hit. So in the game, the biggest velocity that you can have is 173.5 velocity units. Now, another important part, and we're going to bundle this in, is the counteracting of recoil. So when we look at the recoil of an R301 without a barrel stabilizer with a 2x, this pulls initially more to the right. Now, if you are strafing to the left and to the right, this can help you counteract the recoil. And the reason why this helps counter recoil is that you'll notice as you're strafing left and right, you have to move your mouse to counteract where the strafe is. So if I'm not controlling my mouse and I go to the left, well, then I have to move my mouse to counteract to keep it centered. And you kind of see the little bit of a jitter just to keep it in the center there overall. So if you're adding in the recoil and you're adjusting for it and you try to land all headshots like you do right there, then it's much easier to control your recoil because you're counteracting it by still keeping your crosshair center. So this is the importance, not only just for being more difficult to hit, but the implications that it has to counter the recoil by keeping your crosshair center. So there's still an added benefit of it. Now the next section of what we're going to talk about is also the impact of various weapons on your strafe. So if I ADS with the R301, you'll notice my movement velocity is 86.75. If I'm using the wingman, you'll notice that the strafe is 173.5, which is the same as the hip fire. So these are very important to take note of when using various weapons. And I have a full dedicated video on the velocity speed of every single weapon. I'll put it down in the description down below as a reference point. But this can be very important because your strafes, and if an enemy's trying to hit you, is going to have a much easier time if your velocity is much slower. Now let's talk about the segment of how to do a pro strafe on Apex Legends. What does that mean? It's always that sweaty movement added from the left and right movement that you're seeing and adding a crouch to your movement. Now I recommend using hold, and the reason why I recommend using hold is because it naturally will spring back as soon as you lift up the key. It's much harder to do if you do toggle because you have to constantly think about constantly pressing the key to toggle the crouch up and down, rather than just releasing the key and not having to think about it mid-fight. Now the downside of doing a pro strafe is that you have to remember, and I'm going to showcase Sarah's POV, is that you'll see individual people, especially with the flatline. I'm going to pull out the flatline specifically for this example, is that when you're using it, sometimes it can look really flashy, especially whenever you're doing this strafe left and right that you see. The downside of it is that you're not actually completing the full animation, but there is a pro to it, and we'll discuss that in just a second. So if I showcase that movement, I'm not going to hit Sarah, so then I can showcase the POV from her point of view, what it looks like. So if I'm shooting, the head of the character is not going all the way down unless I complete it. So while it looks really, really flashy, the head of the character, and you can confirm in your end, Sarah, right, is not really dropping that far down. To complete the full strafe to be harder to hit, you have to really complete the strafe and go all the way down and up, so the target is much more difficult to hit. Now, the reason why some pros will do this is that by jiggling up and down, the recoil has a different spread with the flatline, and by jiggling anyways, you might as well move up and down because the spray is going to be random with the hip fire. But if you do this by making your strafe too short or too small, what you're going to realize is that you're going to struggle more with your aim by just jiggling it, because you're going up and down like this. But you saw from Sarah's point of view, the strafe isn't really adding much more difficulty to your opponent, and I'm going to pepper that footage in. Now, the big thing to keep in mind is you are sacrificing accuracy for a little bit of movement to throw off your opponent. So while it does look like a sweaty strafe and can really throw off opponents, the higher MMR that you get and the better the opponent is, the more predictable that movement is going to become because everyone is training for the same strafe. So you got to keep that in mind. So as I'm strafing up and down, it might be easier just to strafe left and right and throw them off by being in an unpredictable pattern than it is to go up and down and throw off your shot. Now you could do this up and down movement if you complete it all the way by going up and down to make it much more difficult. You see from Sarah's POV as well here, when she's actually going up and down, the difference that it makes to actually flick and hit the shot. And that movement for landing a headshot is going to be much more difficult to hit. Yes, but remember the downside of your aim. So my biggest tips and advice with discussing both the pros and cons of this strafe is to maximize your accuracy and then add in more of that movement, the duck and weave, because of how much movement or accuracy you're going to actually lose. If you're predictable and doing the same thing, and we've done so many 1v1s that if I do the same thing by going left and right, your brain is naturally going to try to keep the same movement going back and forth. You really have to think outside the box and throw your enemy off. If you know by strafing a little bit more to the left and right is going to throw them off to track a little differently, do that. Instead of being right in their face and then doing the same thing right in front of them like this. This may not get you the same movement, but having them move in a really unorthodox pattern is going to throw them off a lot more and cause them to be a lot more sweaty. It's why you'll see individuals strafe left and right, and then they'll go for like a wall bounce right after to counteract the I guess you could say recoil and then do a strafe. So try to incorporate movement and think outside the box to throw off your enemy so it's a lot more overwhelming. So that wraps up the video. I know it's very sweet, short, and to the point. I don't think this is a crazy topic, but it is very important to create a foundation. You see Sarah here, she helped with the video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment on the video, and be sure to subscribe to her channel. She's bounced up and down because yes, strafing is important, and subscribe to her channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.